Good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome. We're joining you this morning from Lady D's Health and Wellness Center. Like and share, text a neighbor, text a friend, let them know that Lady D's Health and Wellness Center is live. Welcome to our audience on YouTube. So glad to have you this morning. I am Dr. Evelyn Johnson Taylor, Christian author and speaker, and I'm delighted for the opportunity just to host you this morning and welcome again. If you're watching on YouTube, watching live, just type in the chat, let us know where you're watching from. So great to have you. So just type in the chat and let us know where you're watching from. I'd like to take a moment to recognize and to thank Lady D, who is the founder of Lady D's Health and Wellness Center. Her dedication to promoting healing and wellness and empowerment in the community is truly an inspiration. So thank you, Lady D, for the incredible work that you do and the lives that you continue to impact with your care and compassion. We love you and miss you, and so excited for the opportunity just to carry on in your absence. So God bless you. And to our audience, if you're watching, this will be available on replay. And if you're watching on replay, go ahead and leave a comment and let Lady D know that you appreciate the incredible work and how the information that you're getting is blessing you. So thank you again for joining. Our guest this morning is Dr. David S. White, a compassionate therapist, life coach, ordained minister with over 50 years of experience in helping people heal, grow, and navigate life's challenges. He specializes in trauma, addiction, anxiety, and major life's transitions. Dr. White offers faith based support through his private counseling practice. He has also served as a school principal, a guidance counselor, and church leader. Dr. White has deep wisdom and care for his work. He holds 2 PhDs in psychology. He is also trained in several healing approaches, including brain spotting and heart math. He's a devoted husband and a father of 2 sons and a proud grandfather of 1 granddaughter. So good morning, Dr. White, and welcome back. I know you've been here before. You were here, I think it was in May, with Lady D's Health and Wellness, where you presented part one. And for those who missed part one, I'm sure he will kind of give us a little recap to catch us up, to let us know what we missed. And it's probably available also on the YouTube platform where you can go back and watch. But before I turn it over to Dr. White, I do want to say to our streaming audience, if you have questions or something he says resonates with you, then you can just type it in the comments, type it in the chat, and we will definitely relay it to Dr. White so he can give greater feedback or maybe answer a question. So if you have a question, just type it in the chat and we'll be happy to field those questions for you. So thank you again for joining and welcome, Dr. White, and I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, good morning, Dr. Johnson Taylor. Well, I'm glad to be here and glad to make your acquaintance this morning. I loved our chat. So let me go ahead and get right to the presentation. This is part two. Part one, I believe I did in May. The summary of part one is going to be right here. Let me go ahead and share that. Addiction ministry is a sacred calling rooted in compassion, justice, and hope. Clergy are spiritual first responders called to shepherd, not to fix. That's an important distinction. When you're going into this type of work, I know some of us who are helpers and who want to make sure that everybody's okay. We're going with the intent that we need to fix the situation. But this is shepherding. This is guiding folks along, not fixing anything. And the scripture text that relates to that, all of my scriptures will be from the New Living Translation. It says, "The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me, for the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. And that is the essence of what we're doing as we move into developing a ministry of reconciliation for those who have substance use issues. So, for example, the church that you're in, if you're doing this type of ministry, would commission and anoint its addiction ministry team, affirming their spiritual call to walk with individuals and families in recovery. With the type of ministry that's needed to do this kind of work is training and education. So as I go through today's presentation, last week was about awareness, or last time was about awareness. This time it's about skill development and preparation to actually get involved in the ministry. So as I go through, I'm going to highlight the types of missions and ministries that needs to be present in the church in order for you to be ready to do this work. So part one basically establish addiction ministry as a biblical and spiritual mandate. We explored why the church must engage in this work, not simply as a program, but as a core expression of the gospel. So that brings us to part two, where we shift from the purpose to practice, to encourage participants to reflect on the sense of calling, spiritual readiness, and commitment to walk alongside those who are in recovery. So this series of skills comes directly from an organization called SAMHSA. That's the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Service Administration, which is a government entity. And if you're looking for any form of resources to help you establish a ministry in your church around substance use, then SAMHSA is your go-to. They have hundreds, literally, of books and pamphlets and resources that you can obtain for free. Won't cost you a penny. The series that I like best is what they call their TIP series, which stands for Treatment Protocol. And what those do is whatever your subject matter is. If you, for example, you want to specialize in working with women, there are protocols that talk to you about how to best work with women. There are protocols that talk to you about working with people who have codependency, people who have co-occurring disorders. Whatever the situation that you might be looking for, SAMHSA probably has the thing that you need. So what they've come up with is a list of skills that needs to be present in a church for you to have an effective outreach ministry for folks who are struggling with substance use. And the first skill is early intervention and referral. So you want to recognize early warning signs of emotional and behavioral change. You're observing the people who are in your congregation, you're observing the people who are coming in, and you then start to develop trusted relationships and support so that you can start to do ongoing Christian care. Proverbs 24:11 suggests that we rescue those who are unjustly sentenced to die, save them as they stagger to their death. The reason that I put this one in there is often individuals who are on the path of substance use disorder looked at this. We talked about this in part one, the stigmatization and the disempowerment that is attached to that label is very debilitating. And if you don't reach down and grab them and do something to help them, a lot of those individuals end up not only having suicidal ideation, but they actually have completed suicides. So it's a serious thing for folks who are deeply in the throes of addiction. This is to encourage the clergy and leaders to be attentive to subtle behavioral changes, especially in the youth and vulnerable adults. Build bridges to providers to ensure spiritual follow-up. So this is not done in isolation. As you move forward, you're going to see how important it is not only for the individual to build a community, but for the church to begin to build agencies and referral sources and connections in the community. So to when you get to the point of where you have reached what you can do as a church, then you need to have places where you can refer folks out, because more often than not, this is not about having professionals on staff. It's about having support systems in place so that you can make referrals when you need to do that. The second skill has to do with pastoral care and counseling. You have to be able to provide short-term pastoral support while respecting clinical boundaries. And clinical boundaries are very similar to the boundaries that you would have as a pastor. All pastors have, as part of their responsibility and duty, to do pastoral counseling. So when you're in one-on-one sessions with your congregants, there are boundaries that you have in place. And those boundaries extend over into when you're working with folks who are in trouble with substances. In fact, those boundaries need to be clearer to those individuals because they often have trouble staying within boundaries, which is sometimes one of the reasons why they end up using substances. You have to offer spiritual and emotional guidance without assuming therapeutic roles. And the distinction basically is that you are not processing things like processing memory and having them dig up memory. You're basically coaching. You're helping them to identify where the areas that they want to change and start to put some things in place that will establish what their goals are and how to get them to those goals. Share each other's burdens in a way, in this way, sharing each other's burdens in this way, obey the law of Christ, Galatians 6:2. So an example of this is a pastor checks in with the family of a member in treatment, providing prayer support and organizing meal assistance if that's necessary. And if you have that kind of thing going on in your church, and if it's not in your church and there is a need, there's probably some place in your community where you can refer them to. So this is where you start to look at building your referral sources as a community effort. And so that while you may not be able to provide the service, you know where to get it. The ministry need that's here is spiritual care and counseling. I forgot to tell you, next slide, please. I'm now down to the slide for recovery support. Sorry about that, Jay. Are you with me are we there?
Yes, he's there.
Okay, thank you. So recovery support, affirm long-term recovery journeys and multiple pathways to healing. There are a lot of different strategies that people use, and it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. While the skill is helping to support recovery, there are many ways that can be done. You might be doing individual or group counseling. You might be referring them to support groups. You might be doing individual work with them. You might be doing family support work with them. But it's all about making sure that you are doing what we call a wraparound service, so that whatever situations come up, and this is why it's important that the church takes an approach of holistic ministry. It's not just about having folks come to church and you preach a sermon and they're good for the rest of the week. A lot of the folks that come in and listen to the sermons, once they leave there, they need additional support so that they can make use of the information that they got during the sermon. So having a wraparound system to where somebody in the church is attached, or everyone in the church is attached to some form of ministry leader and support, so that they know who to reach out to when they have any kind of issues, rather than just floundering around and not knowing where to go when they need support. So this type of ministry is what's called recovery support. Most churches probably will not have this. So this is something that you might have to develop as you move forward. So you want to honor recovery milestones. So when, especially in early recovery, when they're just stopping usage, as folks are going in that first year of recovery, there's a lot of changes that take place in that person's life, and they need to know that they have support. So every little thing that they do, you want to acknowledge, so that they know that they're going in the right direction, and that more importantly, that people are recognizing the effort that they're making. One of the largest reasons why folks relapse is you're used to seeing them, or the people in their network is used to seeing them as being dysfunctional. And they have made the choice that now I'm going to be different. I actually have made up my mind that I want to change. And people are not going to notice that change immediately. And so they become discouraged and say, what's the use? Nobody is recognizing or acknowledging that I'm changing. So that then becomes another source of wounding, and they can then go back to what's called you can have a lapse or a relapse. A lapse is a temporarily fall back into patterns. So they might have a weekend binge, but after that weekend binge, they come right back and they're back on track in their recovery. A relapse is more than that. A relapse, they are now several weeks, months into the bad behavior that they're trying to get rid of. Next slide, please. Now, ethical considerations and boundaries. You have to maintain confidentiality, appropriate roles, and referral clarity. You've got to know when you've hit your limit and when you need to refer out because this is beyond your scope. Appropriate roles. You have to basically understand that this role is sort of like a coach. It's literally a coaching role. It is not a therapeutic role. So I can't stress that enough, unless in some churches, they actually do have therapy clinics. They actually do have clinics attached to the church, which is fine. If you do not have that, you want to know that, okay, you're moving now into an area where I need to refer you. But when you refer the person, that doesn't mean you no longer have contact. That just means that they're addressing a different part of what the individual needs than what you can do as a church. And confidentiality is obviously of paramount importance. Folks have to know that when they talk to you, that what they tell you stays with you. That develops trust. And to the extent that there is trust, there's a sense of safety. One of the major issues that you have to deal with when you're dealing with substance abuse and substance use disorder is that those folks have come to not feel safe in many environments. Their nervous system does not relax. They're always in what's called a sympathetic dominant body, which means that they're a breath away from fight and flight and moving into a threat response. And so confidentiality helps to maintain that those individuals stay safe and that the relationship is trusting, so that they can share with you what they actually need, so that you can help them to grow. An example of this is the clergyman refers persons to, refer members, a congregant, to a licensed clinician for trauma therapy, not continuing to offer spiritual support. So while continuing, so that's why I'm saying this: when you refer the people, you are not dropping them. It's not a hot potato. You pass them on and then they're somebody else's responsibility. You refer them out because you know that somebody else can better address what you see as a need, but you continue to work with the individual within the context of your congregation. And this ministry need that's here is training and education to be able to identify those things and to be able to have the skill set to be able to provide proper education to individuals. You have to know your limits. Referring out is not failure. It's faithfulness to the healing process. Next slide, please. So next slide deals with cultural competence. And I think this pretty much speaks for itself. You don't want to, and I'll tell you an example I had of this, of cultural competence in a slightly different context. In the Western cultures, we tend to tell folks that when you talk to me, you need to look me in the eye. I was working with some Vietnamese students about 25, 30 years ago. And young people would come into my office and they would not look me in the eye. And I was starting to get aggravated. Why won't these kids look me in the eye? And I would tell them to look me in the eye. And I could see that they were getting agitated and uncomfortable. So I went to one of the adult staff members and I said to the person, why won't the kids look me in the eye? I want them to look me in the eye. And he was horrified. He said, no, the fact that they're not looking you in the eye, they're showing you respect. And it's disrespectful for them to be looking an adult in the eye all the time. And so when you're asking them to do that, they're uncomfortable because they would be disrespecting you in their point of view. This is the heart of cultural competence. You have to know the people that you're dealing with, what is okay in their culture and how they grew up and how they live in the world. And you have to start to match what you do with them to that competence so that you're making them comfortable and they're able to understand and be with you without feeling like they're a fish out of water. This ministry must meet people where they are. And, you know, we say this kind of thing all the time. And conceptually, I don't think anybody has a problem understanding it. But in actual practice, it's not that easy to do. You have to be willing to put your worldview on the shelf and really move into the other person's space so that you can begin to really understand what their cultural, what their lived experience is. And to the extent that you know their lived experience, you can then bring them into a different kind of experience because you're able to touch them where they are. Touching folks where they are is more than just a slogan. It is a deeply seated practice that we need to develop if we're working with individuals, not just substance abuse individuals. This is a skill that needs to be present in all leaders in church communities.
So Dr. White,
go ahead.
When you spoke about the coaching role versus the therapeutic role, what kind of training would be needed just for that coaching role?
There are lots of programs out there now that offer Christian coaching. Mm-hmm. And for example, the American Association of Christian Counselors has a huge program where you can become a certified Christian counselor, certified life coach. There are, if you don't want it necessarily in the Christian realm, there is an international coaching association that you can go and get certified in. Or if you just do a search, you can find couple places where you would get 5, 10, 15 hours of instruction so that you are not coming in blind with no background. So there's lots of spaces out there. If whoever's looking for that sort of thing, I can go ahead and put together a resource list so that I can make it available through Lady D for anyone who would like to have it.
Thank you. That'd be great.
Okay. All right. Next slide, please. Understanding addiction. It goes without saying that anything that you're going to be involved in, you need to understand something about it. And understanding addiction is a key piece here, because in most church environments that I've been in, people look at addiction as a moral failing, that there's something wrong with you, and so therefore you are using substances and you just don't have a moral center. And historically, that has been one of the key pieces of how people understand addiction. And as a result, folks will not share with you or share with the church when they're struggling, because after all, who wants to be in a space where the narrative is shaming? No one wants that. Modern approach to addiction looks at it as a brain-based disease or brain-based disability, and it has biosocial and spiritual factors. In fact, if you look at it from a neurological perspective, what you find is that people who are addicted, what has happened is the addiction process has hijacked their reward pathway, so that they are in the space where the substance is giving them a reward for using the substance. And so for them to stop using the substance is for them to stop experiencing rewarding things in their life, because the substance has hijacked the ability to feel rewarded and to feel good about the things that they do. They do. It does not get to the place to where it's a choice for them to use or not use. Their cognitive ability, the executive function part of their brain has gone offline. Now, my people are being destroyed because they don't know me. What I found interesting about that is there's a scripture that also says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, or the beginning of wisdom. If you do not have a relationship with the Lord, it's going to be destructive, because you don't know him, you don't have knowledge. And knowledge is based on not just what science says and not just what your culture says, but the foundation of knowledge is your relationship with the Lord. And so you need to figure out a way to start to develop that relationship. And again, the ministry need here is training and education. You've got to be able to have the proper training to know when or how to lead someone. This is an aspect of personal evangelism. How are you going to take the individuals that you're working with that have a substance use issue and mentor them or disciple them to Christ in a productive way? Let me throw in a quick aside here. When you have substance use disorder, which is a form of trauma, you lose three things right away. You lose control. The substance has taken control of your life. That's why in 12-step AA programs, they say that I am powerless to stop this thing because it has taken control of your life. The second thing that you lose is your sense of, how am I going to put this? So you lose control, and then you have this sense of guilt that comes in. You begin to wonder, what did I do to deserve this? What could I do differently so that I'm not in this situation? And so you begin to feel guilty about the behavior. And as the more guilty you feel about the behavior, it's the worse it becomes for you, until it moves from guilt into shame. Guilt is about the behavior. It's an external thing. When you move into shame, it's no longer about the behavior. It's about you as a human being. What kind of person am I? What kind of person behaves this way? What kind of person lies and steals and cheats and does all the things that the addict will do in order to get the money to purchase the drugs and whatever they need to do, and they start to feel shame about the behavior. And once those three things kick in and you're fully in the throes of addictive behavior, it is extremely difficult for you to trust. It is extremely difficult for you to believe that life can be better. So one of the tasks of this part of the understanding of substance abuse is training and education, psychoeducation, to let folks know that you are a survivor. Whatever it is that you've done up to this point, you're still here. You have survived up to this point, and we're going to join with you to move you to a better place in your life. Ignorance creates harm. Equip ministry leaders with both science and grace. Next slide, please. Recovery-oriented language and Christian doctrine. So you have to begin to develop the capacity to use language that resonates in the recovery community. So you're not talking about, and words matter. So you're not necessarily talking about somebody as an addict, because one of the things for that is a branch of study now called intersectionality. And intersectionality focuses on there are many aspects to the human being that you are. And so you're a mother, you're a father, you're a daughter, you're a Christian, you are a person who uses drugs. And notice my language. I didn't say the person was an addict. As is a person that uses drugs or misuses substances. Language is important. And so in each of these aspects of who you are, there are language that respectfully honors that part of yourself. So we have to begin to develop the proper language for how to talk about addiction, for how to approach a person that has a substance use disorder. As you become better at using the language, people will feel more comfortable around you because you're not using derogatory language. And the derogatory language is part of the stigma that they're trying to fight and get over. So there is no condemnation to those who belong to Jesus Christ. And all of us are children of God. We have to make that distinction that no matter what the condition that the person finds themselves in, by virtue of their humanity, they're children of God. And so we have to make that mental shift. A lot of times we want to look at individuals who are not Christian, who are not of the same faith as you, who are not of the same ethnic origin, who whatever it is that you, the difference that you have with the person, you want to use that as a means of vilifying them, of keeping them at a distance. But I love the Apostle Paul's passage in Corinthians where he talks about all of the different parts of the body. And the eye is not the foot, but it's still part of the body. The nose is not the eye, but it's still a part of the body. And what we have done, particularly in Western culture, is to use differences between us as a means of separation. Difference between us as a means of keeping us apart. But what Paul is showing us here is difference is a source of unity, that the whole body is a system. And as you have that one system, all of the different parts has a different function. They're different, but they're not disparate. They're not, they function together. They make sure that the body does what it's supposed to do as a unit. And so humanity is a unit, and our differences, whatever they might be, is not to keep us apart, but to highlight the variability that we have as human beings. The ministry needs here is spiritual care and counseling. Okay, so example, Minister Shia's biblical stories of restoration that includes recovery themes, testimonies, sometimes in your sermons, so that they begin to give people hope. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm just checking my time. Peer and community support. Recovery from pretty much all forms of mental illness, particularly substance abuse and trauma, does not happen in isolation. The behavior wants to keep you in isolation. When you are in the throes of addiction, you might be with other folks while you're actually using, but when you're in the pain and suffering, more often than not, you're by yourself. And so isolation becomes a part of who you are when you are in recovery, when you're in the throes of addiction, when you are in the height of your traumatic experiences. You want to be isolated. Why? Because what happens in those situations is your nervous system says, I am not safe. And when you are not safe, you do not want to engage with other human beings. You want to isolate yourself. And so one of the things that you want to focus on is having these folks build peer communities, build communities in the church where you're having regular meetings so that they're not isolating themselves. Because also one of the things that happens in isolation is that's when folks start to do a lot of suicidal ideation. They start to think about, it might be better for me not to be here. And they're sitting with that thought rather than having a space where they can discuss what's going on with you right now that you're feeling that way, so that they'll be able to communicate with other individuals. It is significant and important to build a community around folks as they're in recovery. Peer voices has to lead this thing. So one of the things that we don't want to do as a church community is to bring whoever you are, whatever type of church you're in, and have that be necessarily where you start with the individuals. You start that way in terms of your willingness to go to them. But when you get to them, you have to move into their space without losing your boundaries. You have to move into their space and understand who they are, how they got to be there, so that you can then help them to start to have a different lived experience. Understanding the lived experience and building lived experiences with them builds trust. Next slide, please. So re-entry, a lot of the folks who are involved in substance use disorder are going to have some form of involvement with the criminal justice system. Whether they are juveniles or they're adults, they would have had some aspect of involvement with that system. If they're folks who've been incarcerated, particularly for any length of time, you might want to know right off the bat, when they're coming out, the world that they're coming into is different than the one they left. Nowadays, things are changing so rapidly that if you're locked up for 5-6 years, by the time you come out, you are living in a substantially different environment than when you went in. And so helping people to adjust to that re-entry experience. Reintegration is part of discipleship. You have to make space for them to have a new beginning. And you have to understand that while you have been in this environment consistently for however long you've been in it, they are being brought back into a system that's a little bit different than when they went in. And even if it's not that long a time, the mindset that you need to survive in those environments, your thinking begins to change. And so when they come out, there is an adjustment period to get their thinking to the place to where they can be comfortable in social environments again. This is outreach and wraparound services. Again, this is probably something that most churches have, at least the outreach piece. A lot of churches have prison ministries. They have ministries to when folks come out of prison. When you're doing their prison ministries, they give them information about when you're coming out, where are you going to resettle, and have information about resources in the area where they're going to resettle if they're not coming into your area, so that they are not like a fish out of water, and give them your contact information so that they can reach out to you. If you didn't do the connecting while they were in lockup, you can start to do that once they come out, because they know how to reach you. Okay, we have to make space for folks to have new beginnings as they're re-entering society. Next slide, please. Trauma-informed ministry. This is a whole presentation by itself, but very briefly, you have to recognize trauma responses and avoid re-traumatization. Trauma happens. There are 3 different forms of trauma. There's what's called acute trauma, which is like you have a car accident. You have the accident, it's a quick thing, it's done, you get traumatized by that experience, and it's there with you. There is what's called complex trauma. Complex trauma is when you have a lot of different negative experiences happening over time, different experiences. Then there's chronic trauma. Chronic trauma is having the same experience happening again and again and again. All 3 of those things require slightly different approaches to how you are dealing with them so as to not re-traumatize the individual. Bottom line, all trauma is the result of perceived threat. The threat does not have to be real, but it happens if it's the brain and the nervous system does not distinguish between real and perceived when it comes to threat. Perceived threat is every bit as real as somebody actually threatening your life. So, and most of the perceived threat has to do with your ego and identity. So as many different human beings as there are, is how many kinds of perceived threats can exist, because it has to do with the person's thinking and internal processes. So healing starts with the nervous system and safety. You have to create safe, predictable, sensory aware spaces where these people can meet you, you can meet with them, and they can come there knowing that their head is not on a swivel, and they don't have to constantly be in the threat response in your environment. So your ministry has to begin to recognize what it's doing to make sure that those things are present. So the church creates a sensory safe space, prayer room. Oh, this is really interesting. A lot of the stuff that we do in praise and worship is trauma informed. When you're praying is co-regulation. And the co-regulation, more often than not, when we talk about co-regulation, which is having people's nervous system align with each other, you're co-regulating with another person. Well, let's think about this. When you're praying, you're still co-regulating with another person. It's just that you're co-regulating with divine. And so if your nervous system is aligning and co-regulating with the Holy Spirit, you are doing something that's helpful to relieve trauma, to relieve stress, all of those things, because a foundational piece of working with folks who are traumatized, working with folks who have substance use disorder, is having the nervous system co-regulate, because by themselves, they're dysregulated and going all over the place. They're jacked up. And so things like praying, meditation, even deep spiritual worship where you are dealing with, sorry about that, my phone's going up. Even deep spiritual worship where you're having songs of praise and so forth. Can all of those things be looked at as co-regulating and trauma responsive care? All right. Next slide, please. Family systems and prevention. You have to understand that every individual that has ever lived has a family system. And that family system can be supportive or it can be destructive. Part of doing ministry with substance use disorder is to recognize how this very often the system aligns itself to support the individual so they're not getting aggravated in the family. So the family starts to revolve around protecting the abuser so that they're not disrupting the family system. Not because they're trying to necessarily have a codependent relationship, but because they don't want that person to completely disrupt the family. So a lot of the thinking and the thought process that goes to stabilizing the family is trying to make sure that this individual needs are being met so that they're not destroying the family system. So when you are coming into a family that has a person that's using substances, you want to start to diagnose what's happening in the family. How is the family responding to the fact that this person has a substance use disorder? What are they doing to accommodate that person within the family? And how dysfunctional is it making the family? And then how are you going to support the family to gain back some stability without ostracizing that individual? It is a fine dance that needs to be played. So the church could do things like family resilience nights with meals and workshops and communication around regulation, so that the church begins to bring the family in and the family begins to interact in a more functional environment. And because hopefully the individual is coming with them, they're starting to learn some ways of how to adjust how they accommodate that individual in the family. Next slide, please. Okay, gender responsive ministry. Gender specific care builds safety for trauma healing. And what I mean by that is if you are, it's understood that we're in a patriarchal society. And a lot of folks, and a lot of the things that are out there for how to work with substance abuse and how to work with people who need healing support has to do with a perspective that supports men. And so therefore, when you're doing substance use disorder treatment, you want to look at the specific issues that are unique to women. And you have to be sensitive to those things. And as you become more sensitive to those things, you're able to do a better job counseling women than if you're coming at it from a patriarchal perspective, from a male perspective. And it's not that you're doing something on purpose that's trying to be destructive. It's just how our structure is set up. And so you have to be conscious that the structure is not set up to specifically deal with female issues. And you have to make allowances and and adjust your awareness. I guess that's the most important thing I'm trying to say is be aware that you are in that structure and that the structure has some say-so about how you behave, and consciously question your behavior within that structure. Next slide, please. Grief and loss and addiction. I talked about this a little bit earlier, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this. Again, this comes under the heading of spiritual care and counseling. And you have to acknowledge the ambiguous and disenfranchised grief. And you have to provide spaces for lamentation, for sorrow. One of the things that so a lot of times we don't understand when we're working with folks who are substance addicted and we are telling them to give it up. Giving up that behavior is a loss. And how willing are they to move into that space of recovery and ceasing the behavior? What are they losing when they give up their drug use? What are they giving up? Because believe me, they're not engaging in that behavior because some aspect of it is giving them something that they want or need. And so to just tell folks, you need to stop, it's all well and good for you to say that, but are you examining what the behavior is doing for them and what's it going to cost them to give up that behavior and move into recovery? That's a loss. And every loss involves some form of grief. So you have to begin to look at how you're working with individuals around telling them to switch from substance use to recovery and into a space where they're no longer using. What does that mean for them in terms of what they're giving up, grieving, and losing? Next slide, please. Spiritual practices for regulation. So there are lots of things that we can do. I've already talked a little bit about prayer, but what's called diaphragmatic breathing, which means that you're holding yourself up straight, your shoulders are back, and you're breathing from way down below your diaphragm. Most people don't take those kind of deep breaths normally. You're taking breaths that are shallow, so you're not bringing in as much air into your lungs. And bringing air into the lungs is part of the relaxation process. Silence. In our culture, being silent is a trick because there's always stimulation around you. Can you become? How comfortable are you by being with your own thoughts? How comfortable are you? And for a lot of folks who are substance use, misusing substances, they are not comfortable being in their own head. The silence is not good because when they're in silence, all of the negative feedback and thoughts that's going on in their head is what they hear. And so you have to understand that you have to teach folks when they're being silent, what are they doing? What's going on in their mind? How do they ground themselves? Grounding is a spiritual discipline. It's finding your center. It's finding a space within you where you can be comfortable. And while you're being comfortable, you're able to still the noise in your head and still the discordant voices that have been in your mind, in your brain, in your experience, going all the way back to early childhood. The embodied practices to reduce anxiety and foster connection. So the best way to say this is getting back to trauma. Trauma lives in your body. It is not in your mind. So when you have a traumatic experience, part of what happens is you develop what's called explicit memory. And explicit memory gets stored in a part of your brain where you can recall it with all of the sensory attachments that happen. What did you see, hear, feel, touch, smell, all of those things. And that gets stored in a particular part of your brain. And so you can bring it back. And a lot of times when you have particularly acute traumas, when you bring the memory back, you find that there are pieces missing. Some of the sensory components to it are not there. That's because those pieces get stored in the body in places that you call implicit memory. So implicit memory does not have a narrative to it. It's sensory. I feel it, I see it, I hear it, but there's no narrative attached to that. You just have this sense that something is happening in your body. And until you can get that out of you, healing is not complete. So just doing therapy or coaching where you're talking about what's happening does not heal trauma. You have to start to do something called interoception, which means you have to be understanding what's going on in your body in real time. And for a lot of people, being and understanding and having a felt sense of their body is not normal for them, even though it's something that they should be doing. All of us should be able, on any given time, at any given basis, to recognize, so what am I feeling in my body? For lots of folks who are substance use disorder or highly traumatized from whatever source, whether it's chronic, developmental, acute, or complex, all of those things have different types of manifestations in the body and stored differently in the body in various ways. Next slide, please. Clerical self-care and training. This is one of my pet peeves. And I've been trying to figure out a way to get into the church network to do this more effectively. Church leaders, particularly pastors, are some of the worst people at taking care of themselves of any profession in the world. They're going like the Energizer Bunny. And they just keep going and going and going until oftentimes they just collapse from fatigue. And so this idea of doing self-care and how do you build into your life experience means of providing care for yourself as church leaders, as ministry leaders, and have the proper training to understand how to do it and how to lead other folks in taking care of themselves. So self-care. Commit to ongoing education in addiction, trauma, and recovery. So if your church is building this, the church, it can't be just if you're going to be serious about this, it's not an add-on. It becomes an integral part of your ministry, which means you have to spend time seeing how becoming a church that has a recovery ministry, how does that build into the rest of your ministry? What persons are you involved in it? What training are you giving them? So that the ministry itself, watch this, the ministry itself could be isolated because that's the general nature of working with substance abuse. People tend to isolate folks who are substance abusers. It is organizationally tempting and not uncommon for the folks who are working with those people in church to be marginalized and isolated, not on purpose, just because that's how the structure works. And you have to recognize that those things are happening and be willing to adjust them and change them as you move. And last slide, please. Recovery ministry is not a program. It's a people. A responsive church is one that listens, adapts, and walks with the individuals they're working with. Every competency is a spiritual practice. Every one of those things that I just talked about is part of spiritual practice, rooted in humility, compassion, and wisdom. Your church may or may not have what it takes, but when it opens up its heart, its doors, and its doctrine, you can become a place where recovery ministry is vital, integrated, and important to your community. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. A congregation that's wanting to develop this practice commits to integrating recovery principles in worship, leadership training, and outreach. They appoint peer leaders, offer trauma-informed care, and host monthly, I'm not going to say monthly, host regular nights for healing. This is a celebration. So part of the journey of recovery from substance use disorder is celebration. So you want to celebrate the victories. You want to integrate the community in what you're doing in your church. This is the call for part two is to move from understanding to embodiment. Each competency can be lived through intentional ministry, reimagined worship, and community presence. Encourage participants to assess their church's next step, whether it's training a team, starting a group, or simply listening better. Building a recovery responsive church isn't about having all the answers. It's about being present, faithful, and real. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. White. Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Dr. White? Please put your questions in the chat. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. And while we're waiting for questions, Dr. White, I wanted to ask you, is this program that you teach and talk about, is this something that you approach churches with, or do churches reach out to you if they're interested?
I would love to do both. So far, I've just been, I'm the one that's been doing the reaching out.
Okay.
The program I'm trying to reach out to is something called Forward-Facing Professional Resilience. It's a 6.5-hour workshop that deals with compassion fatigue and burnout.
Okay.
And church leadership, compassion fatigue has two components to it. The first component is what's called vicarious trauma or secondary traumatic stress. If you're in church leadership and you're doing the counseling aspect of church leadership, to me, it is impossible for you to be dealing with folks' problems every day and not have it impact you somehow. And what happens within the church, what happens within church leaders and pastors, is they just take all of that, bring it into themselves, and they are being burdened and suffering from listening to other people's issues and not knowing how to take care of themselves. And so they then become stressed. They then become worn out. And this is where you deal with burnout. They then begin to not be able to function as effectively as they're supposed to, because they are in a space where their job is causing them to suffer. And their head about that is, well, the Lord called me to do this, so let me just suck it up and deal with it. And so they're reluctant to reach out to someone like myself or to accept things from someone like myself, because they feel like I'm letting God down. Yeah. God gave me this and I don't want to let God down. But let me remind folks about what Jethro said to Moses. When Moses was there doing all of the work himself for the children of Israel, Jethro says, this thing that you do is not good. You know, and so I say to the pastors, this thing that you do is not good. It's you care, and you care a lot, but at the same time you're damaging yourself and reducing your effectiveness as a pastor.
Yes, that's such an important, self-care is so important in every aspect. I do a lot of training with self-care for caregivers, and yeah, pastors are caregivers, really. Yeah. They care for people, yeah. So good. Now, I chat, I don't want to miss anyone, but Dr. White, while we're waiting, can you just tell people how to get a hold of you if they were interested in having you come and share or talk more about this to the pastors, leaders, or congregations? How would they get a hold of you?
Absolutely. Probably the easiest way is to go to my website, www.entrainmentcounseling.com, and there is a space on there for for you to fill out a request form, or you can call me at 404-594-2926. And lastly, if you want to email me, it's admin@entrainmentcounseling.com.
Okay, and we'll come back and put that in the chat so the audience will have that as well, so that they can contact you. So thank you again, audience, for joining today. Thank you and all that you do, and thank you, Lady D. We so appreciate the platform that you've created where we can receive information that will help us to be healed and healthy and whole. And to all those who joined today, thank you. And if you're watching on replay, just type in the chat, let us know that you watch it on replay. And anything you want to add, comments or questions, you can always do that as well. And so I think we've finished our assignment for today. Yes, so thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.
God bless you. Take care.